All right. So as we discussed last Sunday, we talked about one of the things that really came onto our horizon was reopening our church and going back to venturing out into in-person gathering. So what to consider before we make it happen. And I wanted to have this because, for mainly two reasons. Okay, number one, first and foremost, because we care about the safety of our church family and the healthiness of our church, our community. Okay, so I think it's really necessary to talk about it. And second of all, it's related to our liability issues. So what we found out this week, because we was talking about going back to our church and also allowing Hispanic church to use our facilities. So we come to this discussion to talk about the liability issue. And so if someone has contracted with COVID-19 at our property, hopefully never happens this way, but the church might be responsible for this harm. So to avoid this kind of risk, we should be well informed and apply the safety rules provided by the proper health organizations, which is like CDC or Virginia Health Department. So I think to understand what their regulations and what their guidelines are important to understand so that we can apply it to our church and our gatherings so that we may protect our church from necessary procedures or harms. So this is kind of recommended by our insurance company. So those two reasons are the main thing why I want to talk about it. And the following resources I used from the CDC and Virginia government and Virginia Health Department and Virginia UMC conference. So they are most updated versions. Just, I just want to revisit, and all of you know, but I think it's worth to remind ourselves what's the enemy that we are talking about here. So coronavirus is an illness caused by a virus that can spread from person to person. The virus that causes COVID-19 is a new coronavirus that has spread throughout the world. And the symptoms can range from mild or no symptoms to severe illness. Okay, we should know how it spreads. There's currently no vaccination to prevent coronavirus at the moment. And the best way to prevent illness is to avoid being exposed to this virus. And the virus is thought to spread mainly from person to person, okay, between people who are in close contact with one another and through respiratory droplets. And these droplets can land in the mouth or noses or directly into the lungs. And some recent studies have suggested that COVID-19 may be spread by people who are not showing symptoms. As of yesterday, the cases in the US, we have almost 5,600,000 cases here in this land, and the total of deaths are here. So this is the graphs. You'll find the numbers are going down gradually. It's relatively still high, but the good sign is, good news is that the number is gradually going down. So that's the bright side. I think that's why, many governors and many states, they are lifting the bars and regulations nowadays. And Virginia, speaking of Virginia, we have a little more than 110,000 cases. And also the curve is going downward. So, which is a good sign. Still, the numbers are pretty high, but overall, the curve is going down now. And talking about our county, Fairfax. So as of yesterday, we have 17,700 cases. And if you look at the bottom graphs, you may see bottom left cases by age groups in Fairfax County, and you'll see that it's kind of spread it out in all ages from 20s to 50s. So it's generally affecting ages. So that's something we can learn. And also cases by race and ethnicity. We find that Asians, 1,500, and Black, 1,300, and Latino They make up the most majority of groups who are affected by this. So almost 9,000, and the bottom part, whites, 3,000. So Latino and whites are the most vulnerable in terms of the cases by race. And the curve, as you can tell, still, there was a high peak on somewhere in June, and now it went down, it dropped rapidly, and it seems like going down as well in our county, which is good news. What about the neighboring county in Loudoun? So Loudoun County, they have less cases than Fairfax County, 5,600 cases as of yesterday, and they are pretty much the same as the Fairfax. It's affecting all ages from teenagers to 50s and 60s. Talking about the ethnicity, it's pretty much the same as what you have seen from the Fairfax. So Latino and whites are the most two majority groups who are affected by this, followed by Asians and blacks and other races. And also the graphs, the same thing happened on June. And then we're seeing the signs of decrease here. The numbers are still there, but
thank you, Lord.
Okay, and the venturing out into a public setting. So this is I got from the Virginia government. There are now phase 3, and they are suggesting, if we are trying to venture out into a public setting, and this is the things that we should consider before we go out. And I'll just read it through. As communities and businesses across the United States are opening, you may be thinking about resuming some activities, running errands, and attending events and gatherings. There is no way to ensure you have zero risk of infection, so it is important to understand the risk and know how to be as safe as possible. People at increased risk of severe illness from COVID-19 and those who live with them should consider their level of risk before deciding to go out and ensure they are taking steps to protect themselves. Consider avoiding activities where taking protective measures may be difficult, such as activities where social distancing cannot be maintained. Everyone should take steps to prevent getting and spreading COVID-19 to protect themselves, their communities, and people who are at increased risk of severe illness. In general, the more people you interact with, the more closely you interact with them, and the longer that interaction, the higher your risk of getting and spreading COVID-19. If you decide to engage in public activities, continue to protect yourself by practicing everyday preventive actions. Keep these items on hand and use them when venturing out: a mask, tissue, and hand sanitizer. And if possible, avoid others who are not wearing masks, or ask others around you to wear masks. And if you're thinking about participating in an event or gathering, so lowest risk, which is kind of obvious that it's virtual only activities or events and gatherings. Or more risk will be smaller outdoor and in-person gatherings in which individuals from different households remain spaced at least 6 feet apart, wear masks, do not share objects, and come from the same local area. I highlighted in yellow because I think this is what we're talking about here, about our possibility when we get together at the moment. So higher risk will be medium-sized in-person gatherings that are adapted to allow individuals to remain spaced at least 6 feet apart and with attendance coming from outside. Local area, highest risk is large in-person gatherings and such and such. So I'm not really talking all that information they're providing. I just, I'm just pick and choose something that I found most important to, most applicable in our context, in our church context. So, and this is something I think we should all listen and think about and pray about when we get together. Okay, so people at increased risk are the older adults. Okay, among adults, the risk for severe illness from COVID-19 increases with age, with older adults at highest risk. So I'll go straight to the graphs here. So as you see in the graphs, the age goes older, and you see there's the higher risks. Another information says 8 out of 10 COVID-19 deaths reported in the US have been in adults 65 years older older and older. And another thing is, so COVID-19 associated hospitalization related to underlying medical conditions. People have asthma or hypertension, obesity, or diabetes, or kidney disease. They have a higher risk of infection or risk of contracting with the COVID-19. And this one says the risks are much higher and as older we get. So I just,
You're young.
but
Whoa,
I
you're
want you to
young.
know that, this is just a number, and this is a data. So I'm sure there is, exceptions, and the Lord can do beyond the numbers. He is beyond science. He is beyond everything, but still, I think it's necessary to really understand, where the data is. It's worth to listen to it. So that's why. And this is important in regards to our liability issue. So unless we introduce, or unless we have this kind of things prepared or adopted in our gatherings, then we might be in trouble in terms of the liability issue. So mandatory requirements by the Virginia government is that we need to have the social distancing at all times, 6 feet, and no shared items, no food, beverages, handouts. We can have food, okay, just to make sure, but we cannot share the food, okay? So any packaged food distributed to individual, I think that's fine. Thorough cleaning before and after using the facility, and post signage regarding social distancing, gatherings, options for high-risk individuals, and staying home if sick. So we have to post that in different places in our gathering site. So if any place of worship cannot adhere to the above requirements, it must not conduct in-person services. And so that was from the Virginia government. This is from our bishop. And so we are UMC Church, so we have to be governed by our bishop. So our bishop guidelines, on top of what we have learned from Virginia government, this is something kind of additional to increase our safety from our judgment. So this is what she said. We have to register before attending the worship service, complete the health acknowledgement form, no shared microphones, no congregational singing. The soloist is allowed to sing, no hugging, handshakes, or personal contact. Follow communion policy for in-person outdoor worship. Open tent where covering may be used. So I know that's the kind of not positive information or data, but I'm not really giving out this information to close out, returning to our in-person gatherings, or sweeping under our carpet about what we have discussed. But I just want to make it happen, okay? I want to make it happen in a safer way. I think families has to be kept together. That's my, fundamental belief. But once we get together, but know that, and many of our members are in the high risk groups, numerically speaking. And so, but still, we want to make it happen. That we have to make sure how we can make it happen in a very safer way. And you may ask, is there any Church in our district that provides an in-person gatherings? And yes, there are. I found 2 churches in our district. There are more in other districts, but within our district we have 2. One is called Vine Church in Vienna, and another Calvary Church in somewhere in Arlington. So they are hosting, so they're not having indoor worship, but they are hosting an outdoor worship services. So what options do we have? So broadly speaking, we have 2 options for now. One is continue the current setting, which is 10 a.m. online service only until we find a better time. That's number 1. And another thing is outdoor worship service plus online worship service. So we do have both things together, and we can make it happen either, I think ideally second Sunday of September. And some logistics about outdoor worship service. So this is my suggestion, and we have some more details if we're gonna make it happen. But my idea is, so we should sit by families in the assigned sections, and I'll show you the picture in the following slide. And sections will be 6 feet apart from each other, and we'll follow 10 guidelines, which is the guidelines from our bishop. So this is what we can do if we're together. So you'll see that, you know, we'll use the gazebo area as our altar and pulpit, and you see the circles. That's each section, and you will be assigned with designated sections, and you can bring your own chairs and blankets and sit by families in your circle. You will get email from me to get the survey. So I'll ask everyone to participate. Like I said, you will have 2 options for now. So continue, number 1, continue the current setting, and number 2 is outdoor worship service and online worship. So for those of people who feel much safer and is more comfortable being in the online setting, you're more than welcome to be there. But in the meantime, I'm suggesting this because we have growing voices, and there are some urgency to get back together. And this is what I want to say. Please hear me that I miss you all. And let's remember that nothing can separate us from the love of Jesus Christ. And what God has bound us, nothing can dismantle that. We have a perfect place awaiting us in heaven. The church is a place where we experience and practice what we will do in heaven eternally with our Lord. So let's hold our breath and keep calm and wash our hands and expect the good things to come from our Lord. Okay, so you know, whatever we may proceed from here, I mean, like I said, a lot of churches, they remain where they are. I hear and I see that small or large churches, they just go online until the next year, early next year. And well, like I said, you know, there are a couple of churches, even in our district, you know, they are opening up their church. You know, even though it's a very limited setting, but not saying it's impossible. You know, it's possible, but we need, of course, we need a lot of prayers, a lot of intentionality, how we can really, you know, protect ourselves and protect others. So that's about it. All right. So,
Amen.
amen.